So Thomas invited me a few weeks ago for this moment of mission and specifically asked me to share the why that drives my volunteerism. So I'm actually going to talk more about why I do it personally and maybe a little less about Room in the Inn in general. And upon reflection of the why, I found that I actually had a more complicated answer. And so if you'll indulge me, I actually have 3 whys that I'm going to share today, and I will try to do them succinctly. For any of you who may not be aware of Room in the Inn is a network of nearly 200 congregations that volunteer their facilities throughout the winter by taking turns housing those who have nowhere to stay. Vine Street is one of those congregations, providing shelter every other Thursday night throughout the winter to people with nowhere else to go. And you probably are already aware of this by your email blasts and by clipboards going around. So the first why is that I care about the issues contributing to homelessness, and I care about the people it affects. And I think that we are all, and by we I mean not just us, but everyone who lives in America, just a little bit culpable in their suffering for failing societally to provide for their basic needs. The problem is complex, as we all know, and I could spend an hour up here talking to you about eviction rates and substance use treatment and mental health access. What I'll share is that I am a medical social worker. That's what I do during the day. And the thing that I see most is that without the ability to hold down a good job, it is just not possible to afford to safely live in Nashville. People with disabilities do not make enough money to afford to live here. I get referrals on this all the time. One thing I will share with you, because I have a microphone right now, is that if you are a person with a disability, and say you get SSI, which is what you get if you're poor, if you're born with a disability, if you don't have a work history, you are going to get on average $943 a month to live off of. If you are lucky enough to acquire a disability when you have a work history and maybe you get Social Security disability income, the average you'll get in Tennessee is about $1,446 a month. When you consider that with the average monthly rent in Nashville for a 1-bedroom apartment, somewhere between $1,200 and $1,700, depending on what website you're looking at, it doesn't take much to see that no amount of me referring you to food stamps or food banks or low-income heating and energy assistance or even church outreach is going to solve the problem. Simply put, the math is not mathing. I get these referrals all the time, and let me tell you, it does not feel good. It can feel pretty bleak. So that for me is the first why. These are our neighbors. They are real people living their one and only life. It is a real problem, and Room in the Inn is a tangible way that we can rise up together to alleviate, even for just a night, the suffering that comes to the vulnerable when our society has failed to meet their basic needs. It is something to do that is productive, more productive than screaming into the void, which, believe me, sometimes I want to do too. My next why is perhaps a little more selfish or maybe just pragmatic. I volunteer for Room in the Inn because the ask is small. It is not overwhelming. It is something that I can do without a lot of disruption in my daily life. I have almost exclusively done laundry, and not just all the laundry, it's half of the laundry. It's one extra errand. I come out on Friday, I pick it up, it's 3 loads. That's all it takes. That's it. This year, our family also signed up to bring a meal, and it was the first time that we did that, and I was frankly slightly intimidated by that. But that too was so small. All it ended up being was putting in an order for O'Charlie's Family Meals. I had it here by 6, and we were done by 7:30. Easy peasy. You don't have to take the weight of the whole crisis on to do something meaningful. You don't even have to take on the weight of a whole night of hospitality by yourself. You can just do your part and know that what you've given becomes an important thread in the safety net that Vine Street has woven together for those people for that night, and that means something. And then the third why, and the one that leads me to be talking about this in a church setting, is that it is a spiritual discipline that shakes me up, and I need that. I do it because I, like many of us, am at my core a self-absorbed person. I spend 95% of my energy consumed with thoughts about my work, my needs, my schedule, my kids, my fears, my goals, which isn't to say that I don't give considerable thought to other people, but they're people that I'm responsible for or that I'm in relationship with or that I have obligations toward. And sometimes my life gets overwhelming or the world feels overwhelming and I turn inward. That is always my temptation, to make my world smaller, to make me feel like I have some control. And so I volunteer with Room in the Inn because it is a little disruptive. It doesn't blow up my day, it doesn't overwhelm me, but it is also not something that is convenient. It takes up some mental energy, not a lot, but some, and it makes me feel just a little uncomfortable. I have found over the years that the discomfort is usually present when I am growing in some way. I am developing an underutilized muscle or learning a new skill. In this case, I think it means that I'm fighting my base nature by leaning into the power of sacrificial care. I cannot add my name to the sign-up list without acknowledging to myself the reason the opportunity exists at all, that there is suffering that others are bearing and which I am likely never to know. It broadens my focus, even if it's just for a brief period every other week. I think of it as a form of behavioral therapy. The more I do a thing that doesn't come naturally, the more natural the instinct becomes. And ultimately, it is my belief that cultivating the instinct to care for the least of these is what God wants for me and for us. It gives me something meaningful. It brings me closer to the kingdom. So it's just laundry, but it is also more than laundry. So those are my whys. I'd encourage you to consider volunteering if you are able. I think you'll find it formative and perhaps fun, and definitely worth your energy.